Oscar retrieved the envelope from his leather take case and settled into an uncomfortable chair behind a large writing desk. Although the late afternoon sun streamed through the bay window, it was unable to dispel the darkness of the old house or alleviate his sombre mood. Fortunately, he had thought to bring a few battery-powered lanterns, and one of them now emitted enough light for him to examine his mother's elegant handwriting on the envelope. The words for Oscar adorned the back, each letter meticulously crafted with. Reflectively, he pressed his fingers against the bridge of his nose and exhaled a tired sigh. The passing of his mother had hit him hard, for she had been a compassionate, intelligent, and thoughtful woman taken away too soon. However, he considered himself fortunate, having married a woman who possessed those same virtues, and having been blessed with a daughter whose lineage appeared to be traced back to the remarkable women in his family. Several weeks ago, he was given the envelope during the distribution of his mother's estate. It was clear that it contained a letter, most likely filled with wise advice and affection. Deciding whether to open it had been a difficult task for him, as he struggled to accept that he would be reading his mother's last words. However, his wife, Alice, eventually persuaded him that they could bring solace rather than sorrow. With determination, he took out a neglected letter opener from the desk and commenced reading the handwritten letter. "My beloved Oscar, there are not enough words in the dictionary to express the depth of my love for you, Alice, and our precious baby Hazel. Throughout your 25 years of life, I hope I have conveyed this love to you. Although my health is declining, please know that I will always be by your side, and I apologize for what I am about to disclose. However, I fear that there is not enough forgiveness in the world for my actions. If you are reading this, it means that I have passed away. You may be surprised to discover that you now own a small farmhouse in Crosswood, Pennsylvania, the same house where I grew up. However, Oscar, I implore you, do keep the deed in the back of your safe and consider it an asset, but forget that the house exists. I understand that you may be curious to see your mother's childhood home, but I beg you, do not go there. Allow me to explain, Oscar. The truth may affect your perception of me, but you must understand the seriousness of the situation. When I was around 15, my parents and I moved away from that house to live with Aunt Avery. However, when I was a few years younger than you are now, fresh out of college, I was offered a teaching position in a nearby town, not far from our old childhood home. You already know that both of my parents passed away shortly after we relocated to California. What I am about to tell you is that they left me the house in their will, but they never revealed the knowledge I am about to share with you. My dear Oscar, because it was convenient, I decided to move into the house a few weeks before summer ended. The town had not changed much. It was still isolated, surrounded by forest, and its residence was still peculiar and reserved. However, they still remembered who I was and the accident that caused my family to leave. While I was purchasing groceries, the woman working at the counter recognized me. She advised me strongly against returning and even grabbed my hand forcefully to convey her urgency. She had a scar on her arm, similar to the one I had from falling off my bike as a child. This encounter did unnerve me, but not enough to heed her warning. I just considered the town to be odd, believing that I was being shunned for something that happened when I was a teenager. However, the fear in her voice has stayed with me all these years. After being untouched for 8 years, I spent the first day cleaning off a layer of dust that had accumulated on everything in the house. By nightfall, I was exhausted and decided it would be strange to sleep in my parents' old bedroom, so I opted for my small room on the first floor. My bed was against the wall, partially covering the only window, with a dresser and vanity on the opposite side. That night, I collapsed into bed, my body aching from the physical labor of moving boxes and cleaning. I'm not exactly sure what woke me up that night, Oscar. I don't remember hearing a specific noise, but I had a strong sense that I wasn't alone. Moonlight filtered through the window, creating shadows. But after a quick scan, I realized that the room was empty except for me. After I turned and looked in the mirror, I noticed something unsettling. There, reflected in the window, was a creature that should not exist in this world. It was too terrifying to put into words, Oscar. This creature emanated pure evil. Even in the dim light, its eyes were filled with malice and its mouth showed sharp, snarling teeth. It seemed excited and hungry as its slimy fingers pressed against the glass, leaving a residue as it scratched its claw-like nails down the window. I was completely oblivious to its presence, with only a few inches separating me from its face, separated by only a thin sheet of glass. It stared at me intently through the mirror, and despite my uncertainty, if it knew that I could see it, I had a distinct feeling that it was patiently waiting for me to make a move. However, fear immobilized me, preventing any reaction. If not for an unexpected interruption that pulled me out of my slumber, the sound of its nails scraping against the window would have jolted me awake. I managed to stifle my surprise and remained motionless. It is hard to say how long it lingered there, whether it was minutes or hours, but eventually the creature departed. If I said that was the first time I encountered it, I would be lying to you, Oscar. I am deeply sorry. In the woods surrounding the town, 3 creeks flow parallel to each other, separated by a few miles. Among the many rules imposed on the children of Crosswood, one stood out as the most important. We were forbidden from crossing the second creek, and strongly cautioned against venturing too far past the first one. My parents explained that there were old foundations and wells there which were unsafe for children to play around, and they also mentioned that several children had gone missing in the woods. It became evident that even the adults of the town never crossed the second creek. Some brave individuals who had dared to come close to the second creek claimed to have witnessed ghosts among the trees. The mere existence of this folklore alone was enough to convince us children to stay within the boundaries of the town. While growing up, my closest friends were Kevin and Alex. Kevin, who would later become your father, was always responsible and cautious. On the other hand, Alex was known for being reckless and causing trouble. As a young and impressionable girl, I often found myself influenced by their actions. One day, Alex stole some cigarettes from his dad, and the 3 of us decided to go into the woods to smoke them, feeling like rebellious tough guys. Alex then suggested that we go further into the woods, past the second creek, to explore and rebel further. Both Kev and I were scared because we had been taught to never go beyond that point. But Alex was persuasive and convinced us. With a cigarette in his mouth, Alex confidently crossed the old bridge over the second creek. Kevin and I hesitated on the other side. It quickly became apparent that Kevin had no intention of joining us. He threw a rock at Alex, called him an idiot, and started walking back towards town. I pleaded with Alex to accompany us, and in my frustration, my head shot back. And that's when I noticed it. The creature, resembling a grey gargoyle, was perched in a nearby tree, not too distant from where Alex stood. It had the appearance of a vulture assessing its prey. I barely had time to let out a scream before it jumped down from the tree and forcefully tackled Alex to the ground. Kevin hurried back to my side, but neither of us knew what to do, or even how to comprehend the terror unfolding before us. Alex's screams and struggle filled the air, and I assure you, Oscar, I will never forget that sound. I quickly grabbed a rock and dashed across the bridge, striking the creature on its head. However, it swiftly retaliated, knocking me back into the water. I fought to stay afloat, but Kevin managed to pull me out just in time to witness the creature carrying away Alex's lifeless body through the dense trees. I'm not sure how long Kevin and I remained in a state of shock, but by the time we got to my house, it was night time and the stars were visible in the sky. We recounted our adventure to our concerned parents and the other adults who had gathered there, and surprisingly, they were more alarmed by the fact that Alex and I had crossed the creek than by our descriptions of the creature. Kevin's mother let out a sigh of relief when she realized her son had not gone near the creek. However, my parents reacted differently. They started hastily packing up our belongings and clothes as if in a rush. That night, we left town and drove to Aunt Avery's place, only stopping once on the way near Chicago. Sadly, my parents passed away just 6 months later from an unidentified disease. Being young, I couldn't fully comprehend the situation. It all became a blur, making it difficult to differentiate between the emotions and memories that flooded my mind. Eventually, I convinced myself that Alex had fallen into the creek and hit his head on a rock, and my parents' deaths were merely an unfortunate coincidence. It was a more manageable way for me to deal with the situation. However, the creature is cunning and intelligent, and it realizes that if the townspeople were to leave, its source of food would disappear as well. Conversely, the townspeople were afraid that the creature would follow them wherever they went. As a result, a deal was struck, sealed by blood. Anything that passed the boundary between the second and third creek would be under the creature's control, in exchange for its promise not to harm anything that remained outside that boundary. According to Kevin, I am now considered to be under the creature's dominion because I crossed the bridge, and my parents were killed because they broke the pact. This situation, Oscar, is essentially a curse. Although I understand that it's difficult for you to believe, it didn't take me long to decide to leave Crosswood once again. Then I saw that horrifying face in the window, like it had chosen me almost 10 years ago and had been patiently waiting for my return. When it finally disappeared, I felt relieved but was still terrified as I had no idea where it had gone. I couldn't move for the rest of the night, paralyzed with fear. The next morning, a knock came at the front door. Though hesitant and filled with fear, I opened it to find Kevin standing there. Our joyous reunion was quickly interrupted by his urgent need to discuss something with me. Even before he sat down at the kitchen table, I already knew what it was about. However, I wasn't prepared for the shocking information he was about to disclose. Oscar, I won't go into the gruesome details, but I'll tell you only what you need. According to Kevin, there is a mysterious entity living in the woods near Crosswood for a very long time, predating the town's establishment. Not much is known about its origins, except that it has been responsible for the brutal deaths of numerous children in the town. Kevin mentioned that it particularly favors young blood, and nobody has been able to find a way to eliminate it. Kevin was unsure of what exactly kept the creature within the boundaries of Crosswood, but his research suggested that it only travelled within this area and nearby towns. He had also found similar stories of creatures around the world. These creatures seem to be everywhere, but that doesn't matter now, Oscar. Look through your father's study files. They will provide more information than you need. Just be cautious not to delve too deep, as it was his obsession that ultimately caused his death, not the car accident that I lied to you about. I am deeply sorry. Kevin assisted me in loading a few boxes into my car and promised to meet up. Before getting into the car, I turned around for a final moment of quiet reflection with him. As I turned back, I saw pure terror on his face. He called out my name, but I didn't have enough time to react. Without warning, the creature sprung from the woods and landed on the roof of my car. The creature squatted, bending its face so that we were at eye level. Sneering, its foul breath smelled of dried blood. My knees grew weak, and I stumbled as Kevin swooped in and tackled the creature off the roof. Kevin fought valiantly, but was no match and ended up crumpled a few feet from me. Panicking, I tried to escape, but quickly realized there was nowhere to run. The creature easily caught up to me and effortlessly dragged me into the wood. Kevin gathered himself and began chasing after us, shouting for me to make a deal. Before I could comprehend what Kevin was saying, I lost consciousness, with only a fleeting memory of Alex's whispered words lingering in my mind. Oscar, as you grapple with the final parts of my tale, please remember how much I love you. I regained consciousness, temporarily blinded by a small fire on the cold and damp ground. Surrounding me were remnants of the past, an old wind-up toy, some dog collars, and Alex's engraved lighter. Bones were scattered all around. The creature watched me intensely from across the room, its feet resembling those of a wolf as it muttered anxiously. Despite what Kevin had told me about its ancient nature, I was surprised to discover that it could speak English. In a gravelly voice, it uttered the word spoiled. Its coal eyes never left me as I nervously adjusted my position. It seemed that I was trapped in a cavern with no visible exits, except 2 tunnels that disappeared into dark. The creature's words and the intensity in its eyes stayed with me as it ceased rocking. It declared that I could not leave, claiming ownership over me because I had crossed the water. However, it also stated that I was too old to be consumed, labeling me as spoiled, recognizing that the creature was deliberating whether or not to harm me. I could hear Kevin's fearful screams echoing in my mind. It was clear that he had wanted me to strike a deal with the creature to save my life. This creature had a penchant for negotiation, so I decided to confront it, whom I called Oscar, and inquire about what it desired in exchange for my release. After pondering for a while, the creature's face contorted into a sinister smile. It demanded that I offer up one of my children and one of my grandchildren. I couldn't help but wonder if this creature had been around long enough to inspire the tale of Rumpelstiltskin. Nonetheless, Oscar, without hesitation, accepted the deal. I nodded resolutely, agreeing that if I ever had children, I would deliver one of them to the creature, and if I were to have grandchildren, I would sacrifice one as well. It may seem like a harsh agreement, but I saw it as obtaining 2 lives for the price. You may find this abhorrent, Oscar, but please understand that upon careful consideration of the offer, I had no intention of ever having children. I made a firm decision to forgo motherhood. I believed I had outsmarted it. The creature grabbed my hand, its sharp claw digging deep into my forearm, leaving a permanent mark. It released me and I joined Kevin and the others at the bridge. They didn't ask me how I survived because they all saw the scarlet letter on my arm. Kevin and I decided to move away from Crosswood to be near Aunt Avery in California. I couldn't in good conscience sell the house and expose another family to the evil that lurked there. I had given up on the idea of being a mother, but couldn't bring myself to undergo a permanent procedure to prevent pregnancy. Even after we got married, Kevin and I were cautious. However, a few years later, I found out I was pregnant with you and your twin brother, Alex. I never told you about Alex, and I'm sorry for that. I was afraid that if I broke our deal with the creature, it would take me like it did my parents. The scar on my arm burned before I gave birth to you. I took Alex, who was just a few days old, back to Crosswood and left him on the other side of the bridge. It was an awful thing for me to do, and I am filled with regret and heartbreak, but it allowed me to watch you grow up into the person you are today. I have done my best to give you all the love and goodness I could. Now I am dying, Oscar. I knew Alice was pregnant with your child before you even announced it, because the scar on my arm was on fire, reminding me of my debts. I can't pay them this time. I can't put you or Hazel through that. I hope to be reunited with your father and Alex on the other side, although I fear the consequences of my actions. I want to warn you again. Oscar, don't go to the house in Crosswood. Only evil resides there. I can't bear to think of what might happen if the creature reaches Hazel. I love you with all my heart, but I don't deserve your forgiveness. Oscar placed the letter on the writing desk, noticing a mix of disturbed and disgusted emotions intertwined with primal fear and sadness. He struggled to comprehend his thoughts, as he couldn't determine if these emotions were directed towards his mother or himself. While acknowledging his mother's regrettable and distressing decisions, he realized he should have read the letter before bringing his wife and daughter to this place. Suddenly, his mother's childhood home appeared darker to him. Confused, he desperately tried to grasp the implications of his mother's letter. His trance was abruptly shattered by the sound of breaking glass, the crashing of glass, the intensity of his wife's screams, and the faint sound of his daughter crying fading away.
Brave souls, don't miss out on new horrors lurking in the shadows. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for bone-chilling thrills.